Hello and welcome to this YouTube video. Chill out, relax, get yourself a cuppa, paint away if you're painting, draw away if you're drawing or cleaning or whatever you're doing. Just chill, listen to me talk to you for the next few minutes because I'm going to be talking about the largest piece I have ever drawn ever, about it getting into the prestigious Wildlife Artist of the Year in London, and also some copyright issues I had over it, which was a little bit of a drama. So this all happened back in 2023, and my work back then seemed to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I knew that I wanted to draw the biggest piece I'd ever done, and I didn't know what I wanted it to be or what size in particular. So I was scrolling through Instagram one day and I came across a photo which was absolutely incredible of a tiger, and his mouth was wide open, his eyes were shut, so you can mostly see his tongue and his teeth, and it just looked like such an impactful image. And I thought, I'm gonna have to draw it, and the only way to do this photo justice is to draw it absolutely massive. Now, as I knew I wanted to sell this piece, I couldn't just take it off Instagram, draw it, put it up for sale, because that would go into copyright infringement, and the photographer, if they ever found out, wouldn't be very happy, because obviously it's their photo, they've taken the time and the money to get the equipment to go out and photograph the tiger. So I contacted this photographer and I was like, hey, I love this photo, please can I draw it because it's incredible, all your work's incredible, and now I am fangirling over you. And he was the nicest guy. He came back and he was like, yeah, that's absolutely fine, you can use this photo for a small fee, which is very typical for photographers. If you want to use their photos for reference, they just ask for a bit of a fee. But it's very nice of them to allow artist permission for this fee. Now, I knew that this photo was going to take me a lot of time, so I didn't want anybody else drawing from this same reference photo. So I contacted the photographer again and I said, great, thank you for allowing me to use your photo, but I would like to have exclusive rights to this photo, meaning that if I paid for it, then no other artist could have rights to draw this image. Now, fortunately, it was a fairly new photo for him, so nobody else had drawn it by this point. So I said, right, how much would it be to have an exclusive license for this photo? He came back to me and he said £100, which I think was totally fair enough. So I was like, brilliant, okay, I will pay you this £100. So then I had the issue of how to draw this piece. Now, I wanted it on a black background because at the time I was exclusively drawing on black paper, which I haven't done so much of since, but recently I have gone back to drawing on black again because it is just so nice to do, because you have all those dark tones there, so you can just go straight in with the highlights basically, and it's actually so much quicker to work on than white paper. So not that I want to churn my art out, but when I'm particularly busy and I've got a lot of things on, like I've got to get work for exhibitions and things, I tend to go back to the black paper just because I can get my work out so much quicker. But I wanted this piece to be over a metre in size. So in the end, I decided it would be 120 by 112 centimetres. That was the sort of perfect ratio dimensions for it. But I didn't have a piece of paper that big, so went online, tried to find one, went to all the typical UK paper art sellers, and none of them had paper this big. So I started looking at other websites and I found online a company in America who sells the paper I wanted by the roll, which was perfect because it was a 10-metre long roll. Brilliant, love it, happy days. And it meant that I had lots of other paper then for other pieces if I wanted to do more large pieces or just lots of small ones. This paper is going to last me like forever. So I added the roll to basket, went to buy, and the shipping from America for a long, heavy 10-metre roll of paper was £100 and the roll itself was £150. And at the time I thought I want to do lots of these big drawings, so why not just buy 2 rolls? I spent £400 on paper from America, and I still have most of it in the packaging in my studio. I haven't even opened the second roll. So while I was waiting for this paper to arrive, I had to decide where in my studio to draw the piece because, like I said, it's the biggest piece I've drawn and I needed a good amount of space. So I started looking at massive like architect easels and all sorts of other things, and they were all so expensive. So I went on Facebook Marketplace and I found myself a nice big H-frame easel. So if you don't know what a H-frame easel is, you can get different types of easels. You've got ones with 3 legs, and a H-frame is basically a H. It's just 2 wooden sticks and then like a bit across and then feet on the bottom, and it just makes it really sturdy, which is what I needed when I was going to be drawing on there. And then I headed over to B&Q and bought myself a massive piece of MDF for about 20 quid, and that was that. So my whole setup in the end probably cost me about £40-50 rather than about £400 if you bought like a massive architect easel table thing. So when my paper finally arrived from America, I was like, brilliant, I can actually start drawing this piece now. But it was all in a roll, obviously, so I had to lay it as flat as I could and cut the right size, and that was so difficult to do because imagine trying to roll out about 1.5 meters worth of paper without creasing it at all, and it's trying to just roll back in on itself constantly. It was a little bit stressful. So then came time to actually draw it. Now I needed to put in an outline, and there are different ways of doing this. I could have done it freehand, but it's a massive piece of paper, it's expensive, and if I got it wrong, I can't actually rub out on the black paper very easily because it leaves a mark. I could use a putty rubber and dab away if I wanted to, but it wouldn't completely remove those pencil lines. So if there was one outside the area I'd be drawing in, it would show, and I thought, no, I'm not doing that. And another technique is to use tracing paper, so print it off reversed and put tracing paper over the top, draw, flip the tracing paper, rub it down. That leaves pencil mark too, but as this piece was so big, I was like, I don't really fancy printing off loads of pieces of paper and jigsawing them together and sticking them together to make this giant picture to trace over. So my final option really realistically was to use a projector, which is what I did. I projected the image onto the paper and then I just lightly drew the outline, not putting in all the details, just sort of outlines of areas, so literally just the outline of the tongue, the outline of the teeth and things like that. And then I could finally, after all this time and effort, get to work on the tiger itself. So working on the black was incredibly satisfying because in this image there are a lot of shadows, so the tiger's sort of coming out from the background and it's got a lot of shadows in the fur, so rather than being on white and me having to draw all that black in and the shadow areas, I could just go over in the highlights, and it was just so satisfying because I was doing all these sort of fur strokes and they're just showing immediately, and I could just keep going over the highlights and it was just appearing so quickly in front of me. And I've had so many people ask me over the years about it and say how much patience I would have had to be able to do it, but really I didn't feel like I needed that much patience because I would go in and I'd just sit down, get my pencils and get into a zone. I'd stick a film on and I'd just draw away and I was happy as Larry. I think for me, the worst part of any drawing is getting the outline down. I find that bit really boring because I just want to get on and fill it all in with the colour. So if I could go into my studio each day and have a half finished piece there and just continue with it, I'm happy. I want to do that. That would be like perfection to me. One of the challenging things with this piece is the fact that you can't see the tiger's eyes because people connect with eyes, and it's something that I love to draw and take a lot of time on. A lot of people compliment me on the eyes that I do draw, which is really nice. But with the mouth being open and his head being slightly back and his eyes closed, I was worried that people wouldn't really connect to it. And it's quite a ferocious looking image as well, especially as the teeth are so massive. They're like sort of this size on it, and they're huge, but I've had a lot of jokes from people saying he needs to brush his teeth and things like that. So, which I like. I love getting these sorts of reactions from my art, because you put your art out there and you don't know what people are going to say, if they like it, if they're not like it, and all opinions are valid, totally. But when you get little quirky comments, that's what I really like. One of the most common questions I get asked about this piece is, how long did it take me to do? And it took a month, basically, with hardly anything else going on. I did a bit of social mediaing, a bit of admin and stuff, but I really did focus and concentrate just on drawing this piece as much as I possibly could. So I spent probably about, I'd say 6 hours on it a day for a month. Obviously not a weekend, but that is a lot of time. And spending this much time on a drawing means that I got really connected to it, and I felt like I started giving him a bit of a personality. So when I get to that point, I'm thinking I'm in trouble, because then I want to sell it and I want to keep it. But obviously I'm not going to sit and spend a month on a drawing and not put it up for sale, because that would be a really, really bad business plan. Okay, so there was a part of this drawing that I didn't really fully enjoy drawing. That was the tongue. The tongue of this tiger took me 5 days to draw. I was sat there for 5 whole days drawing taste buds, and it was so complicated. I'd never drawn a detailed tongue before. If I've ever drawn a tongue, I've just sort of shaded over an area in general and just put a bit of shadow on. But this was like every single bit, and it took so long to do. Now, the biggest problem with this was I was looking at a reference photo. So I'd look at the reference photo, all the taste buds I was meant to be drawing, and I'd look back at the tongue of the tiger I was drawing, draw that bit in, look back at the reference photo, and totally lost where I was on the reference photo. And you might think, yeah, taste buds, just like make it up, draw them in, it doesn't matter. But the tongue has like a bit of a ripple in it, so it's like shaded bits and highlighted bits. So if I was to draw any of those in the wrong place, the tongue would start to look a bit weird. So I had to make sure I got it right, and I felt blind by the end of it, to be honest. Having a piece at such a high price point, I needed it to be in a really good frame as well. Obviously I wanted it to be anyway, because I wanted it to show off the drawing, because I put so much effort into it and I was really proud of it, and I wanted something that would really accent it and just make it look as valuable as it is. So fortunately, not too far from me, I have a really good framer who's very good at framing large pieces. So I took it to him, and the first issue was he didn't have any mount card large enough to go around the tiger. So if you don't know what mount card is, it is literally the card that goes around a drawing before the frame is put on. So you've got the drawing, you've got the mount card, and then you've got the frame around the mount card, and it just keeps the paper away from the glass, because if the paper touches the glass, it can kind of damage it a little bit, and you don't really want that happening. There's no air between them for the paper to breathe or anything like that. So we had the issue of having to frame it behind glass without mount card. So what do we do? I don't know. So fortunately my framer had a good little hack, and we used 2 frame mouldings. So looking through lots of different frames and deciding sort of the colours I wanted and what I thought would match properly with the tiger, and thinking the style of frame I wanted, which was quite a modern chunky style frame. I wanted it to be like a dark grey with a bit of gold, because that would then hint at some of those tones in the tiger's fur. Overall, the framing for this cost, I believe if I remember correctly, about £200 or £250. So if you take everything into consideration, I've spent nearly £1,000 just to draw this piece and get it framed, which is crazy. And people wonder why art is so expensive, but this is why. I entered it into Wildlife Artist of the Year, and for the first time ever, I actually got into this exhibition, and I was so overjoyed. Now, this exhibition takes place at the Mall Galleries in London, which is literally on the same street as Buckingham Palace. It is on the Mall. So you've got the gallery there, and then down the street you can see Buckingham Palace, which is an incredible spot and just such an amazing place to have my art it's very much a dream come true moment. So a few hours after finding out I got into Wildlife Artist of the Year, I was contacted by the David Shepherd team who run Wildlife Artist of the Year, and they told me that it had been chosen to be the hero piece for this year's exhibition. So basically, they were putting my artwork on the doors of the Mall galleries. You know, these are massive doors. It was going to be used on all of the invites for special guests and celebrities and other people and things. And it was going to be on the front cover of all of the exhibition catalogues, which was just insane. But then my next challenge was actually getting the artwork down to London, because it's massive and it won't fit in any car. And at the time I didn't have a van like I do now, so I had to pay a specialist art courier company to take it down for me. And you probably guessed it right. You hear the word specialist and courier, and that means ding, ding, ding. Lots of money, again, out the window. So it cost me £150 to get this large artwork down to London. They came and collected it from my studio, popped it in their lorry and drove it down with lots of other artists' work they'd collected that day to take down to the Mall galleries for the exhibition. But by this point I thought, you know what? I'm in this exhibition finally, I'm happy, it's going to be amazing. So I headed down to London and just saw my art plastered everywhere. It was all over the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation social media pages. It was getting me so much attention, it was amazing. I was so happy. I got interviewed multiple times. I got to talk to lots of people about the work, the process, and just hear all these really nice comments about it. And it was just so insane. It was like a whirlwind. So then the next day I headed home. Well, the exhibition was still on because it was on for about a week. And then I started getting a few messages from some of my artist friends on Instagram. And I was like, what's going on? And they had found that another artist, don't know who she was, never heard of it before, had copied my tiger piece. And I was like, what? Bearing in mind, this was happening while this exhibition was on. I was supposed to be the only artist who'd ever drawn this piece because I paid for exclusive rights to it. And with all the publicity I was getting, I didn't want another artist drawing it, sticking it on Instagram, people finding it, because then that really devalues the work that I've done. And it was just all really bad timing. I've had artists copy my work before, and as annoying it is, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But this time I was like, no, I have spent so much money and time on this, and it being in this exhibition right at that moment, I thought this is not fair. So I went on her Instagram and I could see that she'd only drawn this piece since the exhibition had been advertised. So clearly she'd seen it on all the exhibition advertisements, thought, oh, I want to draw that myself. She put up all her stages of progress with it, and her Instagram was just full of this tiger. And I thought, oh no. So I contacted her, and I was really nice about it. You know, there's no point being like really harsh or anything. And I was like, hey, I've paid for exclusive rights to this, you know, you can't draw this, you're infringing copyright laws here. And she was apologetic, and she said she'd take it down, but she'd already sold the piece and was shipping it off to the buyer that day, which was a little bit annoying. But I thought, okay, as long as she takes it off her social media, that's fine. She took down one image off social media. She took down the finished piece, but all the other images of her in progress pieces she didn't take down. But then she got back to me and she said, sorry about this, I've not copied your artwork, I actually bought the reference photo from the photographer. And I was thinking, okay, but you shouldn't have been able to do that. So I contacted the photographer, who is really nice, and he was so apologetic, and there'd been a little bit of a mix-up. So basically I paid for exclusive rights to this photo, but it was still on his website to buy as a print or as a digital copy, so people could just download the digital copy and print it off themselves at the scale he'd set it at. But this artist had took it that if she downloaded the digital copy, she then had rights to draw from it. So that was a bit of a shame, and the photographer felt totally awful about this, so much so that he refunded me the £100 I'd spent on the exclusive rights, which I felt bad about, but at the same time I think that was probably the right thing for him to do. And he had said that he will keep the exclusive rights for me anyway. And the photographer took the digital copy that you could buy straight off his website there and then. So yeah, lots of expense and lots of drama, but this is how it can go sometimes, and you can't help it. There's highs and there's lows, there's complications, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I, one, loved drawing that piece, and two, it made it into Wildlife Artist of the Year. Unfortunately, it didn't sell at the exhibition. It came very, very, very close to selling. I was so like, come on, sell. But no, it didn't sell, and I still have it now in my studio. But I do have plans for it for next year unless it sells by that point. So if you want to visit my website and have a look at it and maybe buy it, you're welcome to. But I also have lots of prints of it as well, and it's my highest selling print, so it has done really, really well. Anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble on for all this time. I hope you're having a lovely day or evening, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. And I had a feeling it was going to be quite like a big Did that happened. Fabby dabby dozy. No. You love the camera, don't you? Oh, what's this thing? Do you like the flowers?